brain is being attacked right now by something called brain rot, and it's destroying your memory, focus, and even your personality without you even realizing it. And the worst part is that the longer you live, the worse it gets. But there are some things you can do to stop it in its tracks. Now, in medicine, brain rot isn't a real term, so let me explain what I mean. What I'm talking about is something that happens to all of us as we age, but it can start as early as our 20s and get worse with time. This process causes your brain to literally shrink and leads to forgetfulness, difficulty concentrating, brain fog, mood swings, depression, anxiety, and even dementia. And there's evidence that it may be related to some of the most common conditions in the world, like Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, ALS, autism, and schizophrenia. So here's how brain rot works and what you can do to protect yourself. Imagine the inside of your brain as a big city. In this city, there are lots of important buildings, like the hippocampus for memory, the prefrontal cortex for decision-making, and the cerebellum for balance and coordination. All these buildings are connected by roads that allow messages to travel quickly between them. And the faster the messages travel, the more efficient your brain works. But as you age, many things start to happen to your brain. The first is that the walls of the buildings start to break down. They become damaged, and the connections between them weaken. It also starts to rain more often, which represents an increase in inflammation in the brain. And finally, there's more and more traffic on the roads, to represent an increase in toxicity in the brain. Together, these three problems cause serious issues with communication in the brain. Messages begin to get sent slowly or not at all, which makes it harder to think, remember, and concentrate. In fact, researchers have found that as you age, your brain shrinks by about 5% each decade after 40. That might not sound like much, but it means that by the time you're 80, your brain will be about half the size it was at 20. And it turns out that the older you get, the faster your brain shrinks. Like if you're 70 years old, your brain could shrink by 6% per year. To make matters worse, the immune system gets weaker as you age, which allows harmful proteins to build up in the brain. These proteins form plaques that clog up the roads and make it even harder for messages to get through. Eventually, the brain becomes so damaged that it can no longer function properly. Some people develop dementia, while others develop other diseases like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. So what causes this process to happen? Well, it's not clear, but it's almost certainly related to aging itself. Like it seems to be programmed into our biology. Researchers have found that the rate at which your brain shrinks is strongly correlated with the rate at which you age. For example, people who live longer tend to have smaller brains. And if you take someone who lives a long time and compare their brain to someone who died young, the person who lived longer will have a smaller brain despite having had more time to grow it. So it seems like aging itself is a major risk factor for brain rot. But there's also some evidence that genetics play a role too. If you have a family member who developed dementia, then you're twice as likely to develop it yourself, regardless of whether or not they shared any of your DNA. That suggests that there are some genetic factors that can influence the risk of brain rot. But at the end of the day, it's still not clear exactly what causes this process to happen. What we do know is that it's happening to all of us right now. But luckily, there are some things you can do to slow it down. First, we need to fix the leaky buildings. Now, it turns out that exercise can actually help strengthen the connections between the cells in your brain. That's because when you exercise, your body releases chemicals called endorphins. And these endorphins trigger the release of brain-derived neurotrophic factor. That sounds really complicated, but essentially it acts like fertilizer for your brain cells. It helps them repair any damage and even grow new connections. A recent study found that just 4 weeks of exercise can significantly improve the connectivity in your brain. So if you want to keep your brain sharp as you age, then make sure to stay active. Aim for at least 30 minutes of moderate intensity exercise most days of the week. That could be anything from brisk walking, to cycling, to swimming. Just keep moving. Next, we need to deal with the rain, which in medical terms is known as neuroinflammation. This is where the brain becomes inflamed and starts to attack its own healthy tissue. Neuroinflammation is a normal part of the brain's response to injury and infection, but it can become a problem if it's constantly switched on. Chronic neuroinflammation has been linked to all sorts of brain diseases, including Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and ALS. Luckily, there are some simple things you can do to reduce inflammation in your brain. One of the best is to eat a healthy diet. Anti-inflammatory diets, like the Mediterranean diet, are packed with foods that can help reduce inflammation in the brain. These include fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and healthy fats, like those found in fish and olive oil. Another great way to reduce inflammation is to get enough sleep. Sleep helps the brain clear out toxins that have built up during the day, including those that contribute to neuroinflammation. So aim for 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep every night. Finally, we need to deal with the traffic. As you age, more and more toxins start to build up in your brain, which causes problems with the way your brain works. One of the best ways to reduce this toxic buildup is by following the first 2 tips: eating a healthy diet and exercising regularly. Both of these things can help boost the detoxifying capabilities of your brain. But there's also some evidence that mental exercises like puzzles and brain games can also help. These activities challenge your brain to make new connections between neurons, which may help clear out the toxins that have built up. So if you want to keep your brain sharp as you age, then make sure to keep learning new things and challenging yourself mentally. Try doing crossword puzzles, Sudoku, or brain games. You could also learn a new language or take up a new hobby, like playing an instrument. Brain rot is one of the biggest challenges we face as we age, but it's not hopeless. By following the tips above, you can protect your brain and keep it working at its best for years to come. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching.